Secret Circle.
Welcome to the Secret Circle with me, Dr. Luke Decker, the podcast where I chat with authors, filmmakers, musicians, and more about the art of their craft and let you in on some of their secrets. Today's guest is Sam Holland. She's the author of The Echo Man, The 20, and a whole bunch of other books. And today we're going to let you in on some of her secrets. So without further ado, Sam, welcome to the show.
Hello, thank you for having me.
You're welcome. I'm glad we could find time to bring you on. We spoke previously on the other podcast, and you know, we have lots of things that we can talk about, so it's good to bring you back. How's life?
Yes, good. I would like to say I'm mid copy edit, but I'm at the stage of the copy edit where I'm procrastinating massively. So this is an excellent opportunity to procrastinate.
Exactly. How is writing? What are you working on at the moment that you can say without, it's not bound by secrecy?
I have nothing bound by secrecy. I'm doing copy edits for the third Sam Holland, which is called The Puppet Master, and that's out, I think, June.
Nice.
So that's copy edits, and then I've just finished the proofread, so that means it's done for a book called Gallows Wood, which is out in July under my second name, and that's about a police dog handler. And then I'm currently in the middle, which is this mess behind me, in the middle of writing the second book for that, which is due in soonish.
Yeah. Fantastic. Now, people who have like amazing technology from like, Mission Impossible, James Bond can probably freeze the frame, somehow tilt it, and read everything you have written there. I'm joking. It is totally impossible to read.
Well, I mean, this is a mess, and then these are just save the cat prompts. So like,
oh, there you go.
Yeah, there's nothing secretive about those at all. So yeah.
Sorry, folks. Sorry. Okay, so one question I always kick off with when I bring writers on is more of a philosophical question, and that is, I'm always curious about as to why you feel the need to write and tell stories.
I think because it's fun. I mean, the overarching thing is because I enjoy doing it and it's fun. If it's not, then why are you doing it? Like, often I see interviews with authors and they say it's horrible, I hate writing, and it's like, well, why do you do it? There are better ways to earn more money.
Right. Let's send me your agent and your book deal then.
Yeah, I mean, why are you doing it if you hate it? So, I mean, that's the primarily one. It's fun. I do get a lot of stories in my head. I'm very imaginative. I get a lot. There's a lot that goes on in here, and I think it needs some sort of outward, expression. Otherwise, I think I might go crazy. I mean, there's a lot. I see a lot of things happening, and I kind of imagine a lot of situations, and they end up in books normally. So yeah, because because it's fun, and B, because it's here in my head.
Did you have like a hyperactive imagination when you were a kid?
Yeah, very much so, and still do now. Like, I don't understand people that say when they're bored, it's like, well, wow, why are you bored? Just
right.
I just play something that's going on in my head and work something out, or I usually have some sort of story rattling around in there, and yeah, absolutely.
So then when you're writing, do you ever get like well, I was going to ask about writer's block. Do you believe in writer's block, or do you think that's not as, or has writer block become kind of fantasized a little bit, where it's like, the tortured writer who can't, needs to break through the block? Do you get that, or do you not, because there's so much going on?
Yeah, I don't believe in this tortured artist bollocks. Sorry, I'm assuming I'm an artist. I honestly don't believe
this episode will be labeled explicit.
Yeah, it might be. I'm going to get going. I don't personally get writer's block. I get stuck,
Right,
certain,
sure.
I get, bits of the plot or the character things, or I get my structural edits and think, well, how the hell am I going to solve that problem? But that's really solved, I go for a run or a walk or whatever, and that sorts that out. I do believe that people get writer's block, but I think it's more, one of my friends has a phrase, and that's get out of your own way. So I think they're getting in their own way. So things that are going on in their head, either it's the weight of expectation, or something somebody said, or ego, or whatever is getting in their way, and that's I think what sort of causes writer's block. But Mostly I just treat it like a job. Like you turn up, you write, you stop. It's a job. Like I don't wait for this mystical
The
muse to
Muse.
come to me. Like it's just utter rubbish. Like
Yeah.
I don't know. Just do it. Just do your job. Write the fucking book.
Yeah. No, I agree. I remember I've met people in the past who've kind of been in that frame of mind. It's like, oh, I just can't work. I just can't think. I just got bleh. um and I can't remember who it was who gave me this advice, or I read it somewhere. I don't remember, but it's like you just need to sit down and write, even if it's crap. You just need to sit down and write,
Yeah.
because it was associated. They kind of associated writing with, which happens a lot with like sports. It's like, you can't get good at your skill unless you're doing it every day. You might have off days where you're not as fast or not as quick or whatever. Sure, but like you got to do it every day. And even when you have the block, there's
Yeah.
there's probably something inside of you that is it's not blocking you from writing, but there's something probably psychologically going on that you need to work through. And free writing, or as you say, going on a run, things like that, are really helpful ways of clearing
Yeah.
the brain
I think
to then sit down and do some
I
stuff.
don't believe that you have to write every day because I don't think it's possible always. Life I don't write every
Yes.
day because I have a child and a dog and a husband, and they
Yes.
like to see me and have conversations. I probably, if left to my own devices, I probably would write every day, but that's a
Same.
different topic. Um, but I do think that, yeah, I mean, having an office helps, I think, because you can kind of come
Yes.
in and my brain is instantly right. This is where I sit and I do this thing with my brain.
Yeah.
Um, but one of my friends another writer friend does her words, she calls it. And I think that's what you were just saying
Mm.
about free writing. So she'll
Yes.
spend, I don't know how long, 10 minutes or something, beginning of the day, just bleh, writing
Yeah.
stuff on a page, and then
Yes.
she'll move to her book. So it's sort of, but I mean, I have times when I can't concentrate, but it's usually because I've got a lot going on in my life. So
Yeah.
I
Oh yeah,
can't
true.
just ignore
Yeah.
it. It's normally because there's something I have to sort out, and often, I find it quite hard to concentrate. But you just have
Yeah.
to, yeah,
Yeah.
I agree. You just have to. It is a skill. You have to practice it. You have to sit down and write, even if it's crap.
Yeah, totally, totally. And the thing that's interesting about, kind of going back to what I was saying, like writing every day, the interesting thing that I find with that is not necessarily physically sitting down and writing every day. Um, I also associate, like, if you have a moment and you're thinking about your story, to me that is just as good as sitting down and putting some words down. Because it's keeping your brain in that mode of how to tell the story, what to do with the story, kind of thing. So it's not. I never judge someone if they say that if they can't write, like physically write every day, because not a lot of people can. But anyway, today we're gonna chat a lot about process, which we've already begun. We've already begun. Different types of processes are out there for writing. There's a million and one guidebooks and things like that out there that you can read. But let's start off first with going a bit more focused with your processes. So I'm interested first to look at what was your writing process for writing the Echo Man. What was that like?
Um, so let's be totally honest here. So the Echo Man was the fourth book that I'd
Mm,
written.
mm-hmm.
And I think up to that point, I still hadn't really worked out the best way of doing it. I was sort of trying a few
Sure.
things.
Yeah.
I was experimenting with post-its, which sounds more interesting than it is. And I hadn't discovered Save the Cat yet.
Great book.
Yes, which I now do use as a sort of aid, I guess.
Mm,
So I think I wrote a lot, and then it took me a long time to write The Echo Man. Basically, I was writing another book at the same time, and
mm,
it sort of interlaced, and it was messy.
yeah.
Uh, by the time, what did I write after that? By the time I wrote the 20, I
Mm,
sort of had refined what my process was, which is what I use sort of today.
yeah.
Um, Although it's not as good as I.
So what was messy about the Echo Man when you were writing? What was the messiness?
I was writing it in chunks, which I still do in a way now, but I was sort of writing it in chunks and I didn't really know how to structure it. So
Mm,
in the end, I did have a notebook and I did get post-it notes and I did end up plotting it chapter by chapter. And I think that's what eventually turned it into sort of the book it is today. And that sort of came to the process that I have now.
mm,
But it was more, I just hadn't refined how to plot, I guess, because I know I
mm,
need to plot and I know I
mhm.
need, because you have, you have clues and you have that sort of thing. And I knew I needed to do that, but I couldn't work out how. Um, so that's why it was sort of refining my process at the same time as refining the book.
So how did you learn to plot? Because I think plotting is that is a very difficult skill to master, and it is. I'm not going to brag, but it's probably one of my strongest skills. I have weaknesses elsewhere, but having a solid plot is something that I'm really good at, which is why if anyone follows me on Twitter, I'm just really I feel like I'm hypercritical about so many things. It's because I watch something or I read something. I'm like, wait a minute, it doesn't. We you no. So anyway, but yeah. So how did you learn to plot? What were the tools that helped you do that?
I think I eventually worked out that having the whiteboard
Mm,
really helps me.
mm,
And having this one's probably not a good example that's on the whiteboard at the moment because it's at the beginning, so it's a mess.
mm.
But I think I'm quite a logical thinker,
Yeah,
so I needed some way to capture the logic that was going on in my head. And
yeah,
I will say, I think you can sort of see what other people do and you can talk about what other people do, but I think the
yeah.
only way of working out is what works for you. I don't think there is any
Mm,
one way to plot or to write a book. I think it
yeah,
has to be what works for you. And I would really like to be a plotter from the very beginning. So I think
yeah,
I would like to be far more efficient with the way I write a book. So I've got friends who plot like everything
yeah,
from what their character is thinking to what happens, and they do this all before the book's written, and I think that's
yeah,
incredible.
yeah,
But I just can't do it. I can't see the story until I'm writing the story.
yeah.
So I have to sort of basically blast out, whether it's 50, 60, 70,000 words of
Mm.
utter crap. Um, that I hope is some good stuff in there, and
Yes.
then when I really lose my way, and then I really get stuck and I think, "Oh my god, this isn't working," by that point, I've usually seen what the story is, and then I go back
Right.
with,
Right.
index cards and Post-it notes. So I always write from one point of view,
Mm.
at a time. So I
Yeah.
wrote from a close third point of view. So I have one color Post-it note per search of the pedo house, this says. So I always have, like, bad example to pull up. Yeah. So I have like one color per character of whoever I'm writing, and then that's sort of like basically what happens in that chapter. And then I have different colored little post-it notes that stick
Mm,
on the index cards, which is the clue or whatever, or plot point that responds to that particular plot line. And there's usually 3 or 4 plot lines and usually
mhm.
3 or 4 points of view
Yeah.
in the books, and then I plot it out properly, um, and then I go back and rewrite it. So
Nice. Nice.
that's sort of how it works.
I like it. How do you find your protagonist's voice?
Um, yeah, so I need to know who they are before I really get a handle on the book, and that I think I think that's why I'm naturally drawn to series because,
Mm,
obviously The Echo Man is sort of a series.
mhm.
The books I write as Louisa Scar, they've all been a series, and then the new one is a series because you can just drop straight back into the characters and it's
Yeah.
quicker. If you
Yeah.
write standalone, you have to work out who that person is. So to
Yeah.
take some of them just arrive as a fully formed person.
Mm,
So Adam Bishop in the 20, for example,
mhm,
that was him from day one. He's a bit of an anti-hero, a bit of a dick, makes bad
mm.
decisions, you know, devastatingly handsome, of course, because otherwise what's the point? And then I have to know what they look like, and when I know what they look like, then I can start to see how they behave and how they move and what they say and their voice and all that sort of
Mm.
thing, and then I'm away.
how do you find out what they look like? Do you cast? What do you do? Do you have
Yeah,
pictures
I
of Tom
can't. Yeah.
Selleck on your wall?
No, well, not Tom Selleck, but this is an example. So this is from the new series. So I literally cast them,
Nice.
and often I have the person before I have the book. So I had a
Right.
young Rupert Penry Jones before I had the book, and I knew
Right.
he had to go in something. So yeah, he went in straight away.
Is it just a face that you need, or do you then think about the actor, or if you're using an actor, do you think about the actor and how you've seen them in other things and how they might portray this character, and does that ever sort of influence or inform the character?
Yeah, absolutely. How they move and how they what their mannerisms are. Because even if they're acting in a thing, they still move in a certain way. So
Yeah.
if you take so in my Butler and West books, the main
Mm,
character in that is Robin Butler, and he is basically Sam Worthington. And the way
mm,
that Sam Worthington smiles and moves, and he has very particular mannerisms. I mean, you could say it's
yeah.
because he's not that great an actor, but away from that, yeah, and they definitely informed how Robin Butler behaved because I was just seeing Sam Worthington in that role, essentially.
Yes, or you just could have been seeing a plank of wood. No, I'm joking. I'm joking.
Don't call
Sam
me
is
that.
fine. No, I mean, he is the poor guy. He was like really big for like half a second in like the early 2000 or like 20 teens with like Terminator and then Avatar, and then he's
Yeah.
just gone. I
Yeah,
haven't
he's
seen
still
him in
around.
anything. Like I
He's
never see.
Oh, we're going to go off on a tangent now about all Sam Worthington films, but he did. I mean, Man on the Ledge probably falls into the category of early or at the same time as Avatar. But he's done
Yeah.
something recently that was quite good. But the thing is, he had lockdown, so a lot of the films he's been doing have been Australian, and
Okay.
I can't remember what it's called. He did an Australian film which was quite watchable.
Quite
He did
watchable. I like
something.
that description. Quite watchable.
Yeah, bless his little socks.
Oh,
But
poor
yes,
poor
so
Sam.
back to topic. Sam Worthington
Yes.
informed what Robin Butler looked like. Similarly,
Yeah.
Adam Bishop is in my head is played by Richard Madden. So how Richard Madden smiles,
Yeah.
sits is probably how Adam Bishop
Yeah.
does the same
Yeah.
because that's just who I imagine playing him.
Yeah, no, I get that. Let's talk about setting then. How does setting fit into your writing process? Is that something that you know early on? Where it's going to be set, or do you just kind of have vague idea of story and then think about where you want it set?
It helps. For the Echo Man, I knew I wanted it to rain all the time,
Mm,
and I wanted it to be mainly quite a lot of forest, so quite a lot of
right.
that sort of setting.
Yeah.
Even though a lot of it's set obviously at the police station. Um, the 20 is a little bit more urban,
Hmm.
um, but I mean, I do like to know the place that I'm setting a book, so I will often
Mm.
go. I, Anybody that reads my books will realise that they're all set in bloody Hampshire because that's where I live, that's where I go, and everything is Southampton, Winchester, Hampshire, New Forest. I've gone to the New Forest for a new one, so woo! Because I can go there and it's easy and I can imagine it, and it really helps me work out a story if I know sort of where they are. So I'm doing the one I'm writing at the moment. It's about a child that goes missing, and it
Mm.
goes missing from a park. And I
Mm.
wanted it set in Fordingbridge Park. So there's a
Hmm.
memorial park in Fordingbridge. So I went there on Monday and had a look
Mm.
around, and
Yeah.
actually that helped crystallize in my head how that first part looks. So where they were searching, where they were, I think my imagination can only do so much. I can put places
Right.
and things in a thing and make them move around, but I'm not very good at imagining the whole. Well, saying that, I don't know. I mean, Griffin's Flat in Echo Man, I know exactly what that looks like, and I've
Yeah.
never been anywhere like it. So I don't know.
Yeah.
I often have to draw maps though to say this is where everything is to
Yeah.
keep consistency. So it
I
depends. I think large settings, I need to go there. Smaller
yeah,
ones.
yeah. I agree with that. It is really helpful to visit locations if you can. I think you can kind of always tell when someone has been somewhere they haven't. I always think about like we'll use we'll use films as an example instead of dog on anyone's books. But like something like what London Has Fallen, terrible movie. But one of the things that really annoyed me when I was watching it once, the one and only time I should say, is that the geography of London was all over the place. They would be over by St. Paul's Cathedral, and then suddenly they'd be over by Westminster, and then suddenly they'd be somewhere in between. Or another one was Jack Ryan, the one of the second or third season, I think it's second season of Jack Ryan, where he's in London for a bit, and he chases someone across rooftops all the way from Leicester Square to Embankment, and I'm like, that is fucking physically impossible. Like, you what are you doing? Like, I know you think this is a cool scene, but it doesn't work, guys. Like, come on.
No.
um and and they're there, they're location scouting, they're just looking for ways to make this thing look cool. But I think I like it when writers go to the places, or at least have really somehow have detailed knowledge of the place, because sometimes it's not there. Like the last book I wrote was for my PhD, and it was a historical novel. There's a bunch of places, it's set in Edinburgh. I went to Edinburgh, but there's a lot of places in the book that don't exist anymore, and they only exist in photographs. That's all right. So you got to sort of you got to kind of make do, but still, like, physically going to the city and feeling the atmosphere of it. And probably like when you go to the park, you know what that park feels like, and you can kind of use that to your
It's the little
advantage.
details that you get from going somewhere, I think, that
Yeah,
make. So to give an example, in The Puppet Master, it's about people killing themselves.
yeah,
And so one of the scenes is on, we got a big bridge in Southampton called Itchen Bridge, and
mm,
it's where it's where a lot of people jump off, basically.
yeah,
But the ironic thing about that location, which I wouldn't have got unless I go there, is that the Samaritan Help Point has a nice tall pole. Well, I don't know why there has a tall pole, but it does. So if you want to kill yourself, it's really easy to pull yourself up onto the bridge, because it's got this whacking tall pole attached to the Samaritan Help Point, which is like both insane and,
yeah.
but I wouldn't
This
have got.
episode has definitely become explicit now.
Yes, sorry. This is the problem. I never write a book about suicide. So, but it's utterly bonkers. But I wouldn't have known that
Yeah.
unless I went to the bridge and walked along the bridge and sort of stood at the
Yes.
top and looked over and looked at the view and what it's like actually stand. Obviously, I didn't stand on top of the bridge, but standing at the
Right.
apex of it.
Yeah.
So and you can only get that from from actually being there and
Yeah.
seeing it.
Is there anywhere that you would like to write about that you haven't necessarily been, or is difficult, or would be difficult to go to? Where would be the place that you would like to write about, but yeah, haven't been, but you would take a stab at?
Yeah, so 2 places. I am writing a book about New York that's set in New
Mm,
York, and it has to be set in New York.
right.
So
Why?
and then it sort of gives the plot away if I
Oh,
tell
okay,
you,
never
so
mind. Okay, okay, don't say it. Don't say it.
I won't talk about it now, but, it's not written yet. Otherwise, if we were shopping it around, I'd talk about it, but we're not yet.
Right. No, it's fine.
But it has to be set in New York, and we're going in March. So me and a couple of
Nice.
writer friends are going, because you can only do so much on Google Maps. You just need to go there and feel it and walk about. And then the second place is, I've got in my head a sort of road, um, I can't think of the word off the top of my head, but where a fugitive novel. So it's sort of a road trip slash
Mhm.
fugitive, and you need
Cool.
a big expanse of space. And in my head, the character is Australian. He's
Mm,
got that sort of bogan Australian feel about him. He sort of lives out of his car, and
yeah.
so there has to be Australia. So I'm waiting until I can go. I've got relatives that live in just the right place, so I will go and see my relatives. My ideal would be to spend 3 months, stay with my relatives, and write this Australian novel, but I don't think it's going to happen. That one will
Fair
have to wait.
enough. um, so when you're in terms of, you're back to your processes of plotting, I think. Do you know, at what point do you know the ending? I guess if you plot everything out quite in detail, then you know the end before you start writing.
Hmm. No. Some I
Okay,
do, some I don't.
interesting.
So
Yeah,
the 20 I knew exactly what the epilogue looked like and what happened in
right.
that, and I knew even, how the camera swings round and films it. That's sort of
Yeah, nice,
that sort of
nice.
cinematographic sort of thought in my head, and that's how it turned out. What I don't know is the killer a lot of the time. I usually have
Mm,
utterly no idea who the killer is. And actually to the point that in the 20, I killed so many people that I had nobody left who could be the killer. So I had to go back and obviously not kill some people. So so often, yeah, I don't know who the killer is. I usually don't know. Yeah. I've normally got a fairly good idea. What I'm writing
mm.
next, I know pretty much, but then it'll always change, like, often it changes and or yeah, or the characters behave in ways that they didn't, and, yeah, it's interesting.
Uh, So how does character behavior begin to sort of change the plot or change the outcome for you, like as let's say when you were writing the 20 and you killed too many people, so then you had to
Worse.
amend that. So yeah, how does that, what is that process like of trying to amend that,
Well,
or yeah.
yeah, so for the puppet master, the killer in that, he was don't wanna give it away, but he was supposed to be a supplementary character, and then he said something, or I got
Mm,
such a strong view of who he was
mm.
that I mean, most serial killers are men, I'm not giving much away here, um,
Yeah, 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 true.
that I kind of thought, "It's him, that's who it is," and
Mm,
then the sort of pieces fell into place, and then I could sort of see the plot better, and,
yeah.
um in a way, it's easier to see the red herrings than it is to see the killer. So it's easier to see the people who you want to point the finger at than it is to see the people who it actually is. But then, of course, you need a good motivation and you need it to make sense.
Yeah, I agree, because I see, weirdly I have the opposite problem. I'm always like, okay, this is the person who is behind it all, and then I'm like, oh crap, now I got to come up with red herrings. Shoot,
I've always
that
got a
that's
million red
tough.
herrings, but I have the red herrings because I don't know who the actual killer is. So then I have to go
Interesting.
back and like
Yeah,
take out the clues that actually point the finger and change it all around. So
yeah.
it
I
makes it fun.
did.
It makes it like enjoyable, I think.
Yeah, no, it's. I think that's the other thing is, like, there's other people who write in various ways, but like, it's almost, you in a way, what you're describing sounds a little bit like, I think it was Val McDermott who used the analogy of driving in the fog, with headlights. You can only see what's,
Yeah.
yeah, and it seems like there's a little bit of an element to that with the way you're kind of going through. You have a lot of information, but you don't know who the killer is. So it's like you have the map, but you're visiting the cities, and learning what they look like as you go, and things like that. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I often have sort of conversations
Mm,
between people, or I have scenes in my head where, the pivotal scenes that you sort of definitely want. So whether it's sex scenes or
yeah.
death scenes, those are usually the pivotal scenes.
Yes.
And then you sort of build a book, or I build a book around that. Um,
Interesting.
but it's really inefficient, and I wish there was a more efficient way of writing a book, because if I had the plan and I just sat down and wrote, it would be a lot quicker.
Yeah. Well, okay. So what was the pivotal scene or scenes that you had in your head when you were doing? Let's go with the Echo Man. Let's go back a little bit, because maybe not as many people have read the 20 yet. So let's go with Echo Man.
Yeah, so Eckerman was, let me think. I definitely saw the prologue in my head.
Hmm.
So the scene at the prologue is when a man's taking two bodies out of, positioning them in the boot of a
Yeah.
car. So I had that scene. I had the scene where Jess jumps out of a window. Don't want to give too many
Mm.
spoilers, but
Yeah. Sure. Yeah.
she
Yeah.
so she So that house on fire, she jumps out of a window. Weirdly, I had a scene, I had an image of Griffin with a gun in his hand,
Mm.
which never made it into the book because there was never any
Oh,
reason why Griffin would have a gun in his hand. But I had
yeah,
like that sort of looking down the barrel of the gun with Griffin pointing a gun.
yeah.
There's a scene where Tara and Griffin it's just little sort of snippets. Oh, there's a sex scene which definitely went in the end between Tess and Griffin that I was like, that's sort of how they first, which ended up
Right.
not being a sex scene in the end. It's like pulled
Ah,
back, so to speak.
right.
But yeah, oh, well, there was a scene in the 20, which it got taken back and taken back and taken back in the end. But yeah, it's
Mm.
really hard to talk about without going too many spoilers because they're
Yeah, yeah.
always pivotal plot scenes. They're like the midpoint reversal, or they're the end of Act 1 or the end of Act 2, or they're the pivotal ones in the characters' sort of journeys.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's fascinating though. It's interesting because everyone does it in so many different ways. That's I never really I see that's kind of opposite to me. I don't really think of pivotal scenes. They don't really come to me that often. Like an idea, the idea for the story or the person who did it or the twist will, but like I very rarely come up with a scene that's like, oh, that's a scene. What could be the story behind that scene? That's what it's interesting because I never think of it that way. But
But
also I
even
think that would
music,
be kind of cool.
I often end up with a trailer, sort of like a film trailer of it.
Right.
So if I hear a particular song, often that is either the lead titles or the trailer, and
Right.
then the scenes fit in the trailer,
Yeah.
often, and that's sort of like, so it's, yeah, it's I do plot and see a book very visually, very
That
like
that is cool. I mean,
whatever
are you
it's
ever
called.
do you ever write scripts? Have you ever thought about what's your
No, never written a
why not?
screenplay.
Why not?
I don't know, because it's an industry that I know nothing about, and it's sort of like better the devil you know in a way.
I think the people who are in the industry don't know anything about the industry, so it's fine. It's
It
absolutely
just
fine.
seems even harder to break into than novel writing.
Sometimes. I mean, there have been times where I'm like, I think that looks easier than this shit. But
Well, there is that too, yeah. There, when I eventually lose my temper at this particular industry, maybe I'll branch off.
yeah. Yeah. Um okay, so we kind of talked a little bit about, research processes and, how you go to locations and things like that. But what about other research processes? So, you need to know medical information, or, if you're using a weapon, you need to know about that weapon, or, whatnot. How does that fit in? Do you write a scene and then put like need expert explanation here and come back
Yeah.
to it, or do you pause and find that explanation? What do you do?
A sort of mix. If I know it's going to be about a particular topic, then I'll often do quite a lot of research up front. But
Mm,
then often I find I'm too desperate to get that information in the book. Like,
right.
because books
Yeah.
don't need an essay, 1,000-word essay on whatever topic is you're writing about. So
Yeah.
often when I write the absolutely terrible first draft, I will put in square brackets, research whatever this is, or research
Yeah.
this, or check this. And then I'll go back and fill in the gaps. Um, so I guess I do it a variety of ways. I do a lot of books. So with police stuff, because all my books tend to be police stuff, there's the
Mhm.
the valuable Blackstone's police manual, which lives
Yes.
above my desk, which is
Yeah.
like what to charge people with and crimes and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
But then I have a couple of friends that are coppers who I speak
Yeah.
to. For my latest one, it's about a police dog handler. Sorry, I've got fluff in my mouth. And so I had to find a police dog handler because I've got a couple of books up here that are about police dog handlers, but
Right.
it's the little stuff that you don't always get. So I had to find one and make him my
Yeah.
best friend. So now I have a guy called Paul he's a police dog trainer. He trains
Awesome.
police dogs for Hampshire Constabulary. And I go and see him and meet his dogs, and I ask him a billion questions, and he tells me why it's wrong. And yeah,
Yeah.
it's utterly fascinating. And then my
Nice.
stepbrother-in-law is a doctor, and he helps me out with all the doctor stuff.
Epic.
Same with my sister-in-law is a pharmacist, so she helps me with drugs. so to speak. Who else? My stepsister-in-law's a paramedic, so anything that Matt can't do, she knows from a paramedic point of
Yeah.
view. So, and then I've got
Oh,
a
cool.
blood spatter expert as well who helps. So, just a
Yeah.
number of people who I've sort of pulled together and now who help me whenever I need stuff.
I like that. So you mentioned earlier about sort of like it's easy, you don't need all the information in, but you need to know the information to make sure the execution seems right. How do
Yeah.
you how do you go about how do you kind of judge, I think, when something is you may be over explaining it or just putting in the detail because you've researched the detail and cut that out.
I think in the draft, when you go back and draft it, if something
Yeah.
feels boring or slow, then it's yeah, you slowed down. I mean, my books are very fast, sort of fast action, fast moving. So
Yeah.
yeah, you just need enough so people understand the context, but not so much that it
Yeah.
gets dragged down. I mean,
Yeah.
police work is quite quick moving anyway. It's quite easy.
Yeah, I think because what it's interesting to me and also irks me a bit is I read again my last book was a historical, so I was reading a bunch of historical novels, and I've noticed a trend. I've noticed a trend in the last couple of years. A lot of historical novels. I almost think they're historical because they feel like Wikipedia dumps. Um,
Right.
there was a couple of books that I read that I think in general people liked them, but every paragraph, every bit of dialogue would get paused for like half a page paragraph of historical information, whether it's like the protagonist is walking into a building and the guy will give a whole explanation about this building and like its historical significance, and I'm like, I don't need to know this stuff. This doesn't make it a historical novel, really. Like this is just like I don't need this information.
Yeah.
um and I would say even that is being able to know when to pull that back is a really important skill when you're particularly when you're in the drafting phase. I get it if when you're in the or the editing phase. I get it when you're drafting your first draft. You might put, total, that's fine. But
Yeah.
as you go
Yeah.
along, like sometimes you just got to pull that stuff out.
Yeah.
Pull it
I mean,
out.
you have to ask, is it essential to the plot, or does it set some sort of, description that you need? And if it's
Yeah.
not, then yeah, it just has to come out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Do you ever try to or need to distance yourself from the work your current project because or do you just like bash it out in one go? Like yeah.
yeah, well, no. Just bash it out and go. There's not a lot of distance that goes on in I just kind of get on with it. I mean, I write a lot of books a year, so I haven't got time for like stepping away and going, oh, I think I'll just read a book today.
Right.
I have to just get on and write the fucking book. Otherwise, but I enjoy it as well. I actively look forward to sitting down and writing every day and getting involved and doing all of this. So I get grumpy if I'm away from my desk for too long. So there's no
Yeah.
distancing that goes on here.
No, that's fair enough. I will admit there are times where I'm like, I need to step away from this for a bit, and by a bit, like I mean like maybe a day, something like that. But I there have been times where I've known other writers who are they sort of, and I guess it's that writer's block thing goes back to that a little bit. And it's like, well, what is causing your inability to push forward with the story? And I guess sometimes it could just be like what you were saying earlier, like if life is in the way, there's a lot of stuff going on, you might
Yeah,
not be able to necessarily focus too much on it, and that can definitely cause you to pause maybe.
yeah,
um
pause. But often if you switch books, as I
mm,
do, sorry, wait a minute. If you switch books, then that's sort of the break. So often if I
right.
write on one book, I'll give it in, or then I get pulled back to copy edits for whatever reason for another book.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then just that
Yeah.
space, I think, gives you time to think about what you're trying to achieve and
Yeah.
what's going on. Sorry, the dogs. Hello.
It's all right.
Dogs waking up.
How important is brainstorming with others when you're in the plotting phase or editing phase, or yeah, does that have a function?
It can be, I think. It can be really useful. In the past, I wrote quite a few books without any writer friends.
Yeah.
And then I met a group of people who, I'm now on a WhatsApp group, and, we
Mm.
do lots of mindless chatter throughout the day. But also, if we get stuck, or some of us get stuck, we have like a Zoom brainstorming session when
Oh,
4 or
cool.
5 or 6 of us maybe will come online, and we'll explain the plot and basically just get fresh input or fresh questions even. So why is that
Mm.
person doing that, or why is that happening? And that's actually been really, really helpful,
Yeah.
to sort of working out if you get really stuck and you just can't see how, you've got yourself in a plot hole and you just can't see how to get out of it. Having that sort of thing is really helpful, I think.
Yeah, I totally agree, because it's interesting, because I know I've met a bunch of writers who I'll ask, oh, are you in a writers group? Do you things like that. And the amount of times that I hear people say, oh no, I just do it all myself. And I'm like, really? Because I mean, maybe sure, and maybe you only work with your editor or whatnot,
Yeah, I
but
think but I think there's a lot to be said for having too many people in a like, I only have,
sure,
in terms of actual feedback on a manuscript,
yeah,
there's very few people who I let read
yeah,
before. Like, obviously my agent doesn't really read them unless he needs to. But I
right,
have a few sort of trusted author friends, but I
yeah,
don't have beta readers, for example. I know some people have these big group of beta readers, and I think, what are they?
yeah,
Like, I don't
yeah,
have
no,
that. And
nah,
I'd
I
like to,
I
by the time they've read it, I would have moved on to another book and it's done. It's like, I can't
yeah.
wait for you to
Yeah, I tried with in a very early draft of the last book I did. I tried some beta reading to see if it was for me, and it's not for me. The feedback I had was terrible, and like one individual who I don't even remember her name, but like she sent it back to me within about a couple of days with the comment, this book isn't, there's just too much cursing. And it's like, okay, so this book isn't for 45-year-old Christian women. That's fine. That's fine. I'm okay with that.
I think
Success.
you have to, yeah, it's choose one job. I think you have to find people who understand what you're trying to achieve and what
Yes.
books you write, and you like their
Yeah.
books as well. So you
Yes.
like their writing style, you trust their judgment, and they're not just going to say, well, I don't like that because, yeah, it's too much. They say fuck too lot. It's like, well, fuck off.
Yeah. Fuck.
Um,
Fuck you. Fuck you. Yeah. I agree. But you've made a really important point though, and that is, you know, writing groups are important, but not like mass groups where you're with a bunch of people. Definitely, you find I'm with you. You find the people that like these are the 2 to 3, 4 people or whatever. You might have 5 people. I don't know. But you have a really tight knit of people who you definitely trust. You like their writing, and therefore when they give you that constructive feedback, because sometimes you sit in a writers group, and I've sat in them before, whether that's it during my MA and stuff like that, where you just get people who think that they know better than the writer, and they just are there to kind of tell you off or whatever, or you have the people that are like so fucking sensitive that you're like, okay, well, this structurally doesn't really work, and you're throwing this in, this needs developed, and then they're like, acted like you've just like stabbed them in the face, and it's like, do you want your story to be good or not?
But
Come
also,
on.
it has to work both ways. So the
Yeah,
people that you have read your books, they, it's reciprocal. So you have to
definitely.
expect that you're going to read their books,
Oh
but
yes.
you have to know that that book is going to be good, because if it's absolute, you don't want to be the person telling them that it's absolutely terrible. So you have to trust that the book that they're going to give you is going to be really
Yes.
good. Otherwise, you're in a
Yeah.
really awful position.
Oh my
So
god,
yeah,
it's true.
there's no point getting somebody whose books you absolutely hate to read your book. Well, firstly, because you won't trust their judgment, and secondly, because theirs is going to come your way, and then you have to tell them you hate it. I mean, it's
Exactly. Exactly. Yep. Nope. I 100% am with you on that one. Oh god, yes. Um that's a conversation off camera. Um
oh, it's just
Okay.
okay. We'll save that. Fuck that one.
Yeah, what about editing? Where does editing fall into your process? I know there's some people. I remember once my supervisor mentioned that he won't move on until the chapter or the page that he's working on is 100% perfect.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
Nah.
nah.
No, no. The first draft that I write is absolutely terrible, like awful, absolutely awful. I know, I mean, Joanna Cannon, for example, is another one who starts at the beginning and
Mhm.
writes drafts as she goes. And by the time she gets to the end, that's a done, perfect book. Perfect.
Yeah.
But no. So I have basically, I think I have 3 or 4 run throughs, depending on how well I write it the first time around.
Yeah.
The first time is absolute. Hello, dog. The first one is absolute garbage. Absolute
Yeah.
garbage. The second time is trying to get the things in the right place. So trying to get. So then I'll plot it, and then I'll try and make sure that all the chapters are in the right order and the right things happen in the chapter and the right conversations are had, and maybe that the clues fall in the right place. And then the third time will be a bit more of that. Sorry, the dog's not behaving himself. Get in your bed. Get in your bed. He goes under the
Get
desk
in
and
your
then he
bed,
pulls all the
dog.
cables. Get in your bed. Sorry, then the third time is a bit more of that. And then the very last time will be sorting out the language, as in, does it sound nice? So reading it aloud, adding in metaphors where I've put nice metaphor in here in blocks because I'm terrible at metaphors. So it's all that,
Amazing.
it's making it sound good and taking out all the errors and all that sort of stuff. And then I send it off to my editor, and then the whole thing starts again.
For like newbie writers and things like that, I think a lot of people don't understand how many drafts a writer might go through. So I'm curious, when from start to finish, how many times do you think you will have drafted the novel?
So 3 or 4 before it goes to my editor. Structural edits. It's the same process when I do structural edits, though. I'll rip it apart, make sure everything's in the right place.
Yeah.
And then the very last thing will be reading it aloud, making sure it sounds nice.
Yeah.
Echo Man had the most of any I think I've ever done. And I was on something like version 10, I think, by the end of Echo Man. It got properly out. So I do version control. I have version 1, which is a big, basically it's all the same, but then I have 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, 1.4, which is when things start to change a lot. So then then if I'm changing a lot, I'll go version 2, and then off it goes.
Right.
Yeah, a lot. I mean, Echo Man, I was proper sick of it because then I had to do US copy edits, US proofread, and I was just like, no, just no, no more.
Can't we all just use the same
the
way we spell words and things? Come on.
Yeah, I love foreign translations because you don't have to do any of that. You just give them the book and go, there you go. American, you have to go through the whole process again. It's like,
take out all the U's and all the S's.
I mean, the copywriter does that, but you then have to check it all and check that your understanding of flapjack is the same as the American understanding of flapjack, which it is not.
No, it will not be. No, it will not.
Really wasn't.
No. Okay, so a while ago, there was an individual on Twitter who, I can't remember who it was, an author, or who mentioned that what they do is they write the whole book and then they delete it and then they start again. I think both of us found this to be kind of bullshit. I'm calling bullshit. But I'm curious as to your take on that, the idea of that kind of process of writing a whole book and then deleting it because your brain is only going to remember, apparently, all the best stuff.
I mean, so I think it's a little bit apocryphal. Is that the right word?
Yeah.
So there's 2 individuals who have particularly said that, which I can talk about because I'm going to be fairly nice and, well, I don't know. And I then dug around because I knew I was chatting to you. I then dug around to try and find where they had actually said it. Where is it written in concrete that they said it? So one of them was Lauren Groff, and I'm just going to dig out my phone here because I parroted it. So the Lauren Groff one, I mean, she writes one book every 5 years.
Right.
So my first comment would be anybody that does this has way too much time on their hands.
Yeah. Yes.
like I couldn't do that. I would have a heart
No.
attack because I just,
Yeah.
I write a book in 4 months. I can't write a book in 4 months if I'm writing the whole thing, deleting it, and then starting again.
Exactly.
But this says, so when she starts something new, she writes it out longhand in a large spiral notebook, completes a first draft, puts it in a banker's box, and never reads it again. Then she'll start the book over, working in memory. The idea is that this way only the best, most vital bits survive. I mean, she's a New York Times bestseller, so maybe we're doing it wrong. Maybe,
or is it just eccentric nonsense? Because the idea that you write it out in longhand and then take it to a bank and put it in a lockbox, and then you never look at it again.
I wrote this paragraph once, which I absolutely loved, and by accident deleted it and couldn't get it back. And I still mourn this lost one paragraph. So there would be stuff that I would write and I would never remember it. I don't have the memory to remember it. And then the second one is Gillian McAllister.
Yeah.
And so I couldn't find it written down anywhere where she's written it down and said that. I think she said it on panels.
Okay.
That she deletes it. But then so what she said here is, I never really get it right first time and almost always delete my entire draft. Well, maybe that is what she's saying. By which time I know what the book is about. I mean,
yeah, but it's like, as you were saying, like there's sentences and phrases and things like that are going to be in that initial draft that might be damn good. And like, I don't believe that you just don't ever look at it. I don't believe it.
Can you imagine this in any other job? Like saying to your boss, yeah, I did that project that you asked for, but I deleted it and now I'm going to start it again. You'd be fired. Like there's no other job that would humor this sort of eccentricity.
Eccentricity. That word. I was going to try and say it, but couldn't. No, it's nuts.
If it works for you, fine, do it.
Yeah.
But it does seem utterly insane that as you say, you would write something and then you wouldn't remember it. But
no. I really, really, really don't buy it. I don't. Because also the idea of like, deleting it or whatever. Like
I can't imagine they sit there and go, bing, delete. Right.
Yeah, or shred it.
Yeah, I can't imagine that that's the process because it just seems insane.
It does.
It does. Explain to your editor. So I wrote the book and then I deleted it again and now I'm going to write it. It's like, what? Why did you do that, you idiot? I don't know. It just seems like one of those things people make up because it sounds good rather than it actually is. I don't know. Maybe they do.
I'm with you on that. It's the fairy tale idea of being a writer.
We have to drink and we have to sit in a garret and we have to work until 3 o'clock in the morning to get our books done. No, I've never done that.
So the last question that I have for you is about process and genre. Does your process change depending on the type of genre that you're working on?
Well, I've only ever written crime. I write serial killer crime or police procedural, slightly nicer crime.
Slightly nicer crime.
Slightly nicer crime with less cunts and less rape scenes.
There you go. Very explicit episode this time, guys.
Yeah, sorry.
Capital E.
I was allowed to swear, so I'm going to say this. Does my process change? No, probably not. It's probably fairly similar. My Sam Holland books tend to be longer. They tend to be about 105,000 words, and the other ones tend to be about 85,000, 90,000 words. Just because they have more in them, and I think they're a little bit more complicated.
Yeah.
But no, the process is still pretty much the same. I have aspirations to write a romance.
Okay. So how would you approach that? How would you approach that right now? Go.
Similar way, though, I think. So in my head now, I haven't got time to write it, probably not even next year, but in my head, I'm still thinking in terms of Save the Cat and because even though it's not deaths or twists that mark those points, there's still something that has to happen.
Yes.
And I've read quite a lot of romances recently, and as soon as you're a writer and you start reading books, you start to dissect them, don't you? And I can
Mm.
still see the same markers that that author's putting down.
Yeah.
So I'm still in my head thinking, what would the midpoint reversal be? What would the something is dead be? What would the,
Yeah.
how it would all work? So
Yeah.
yeah, I'm still
Yeah.
planning it. I think I'd still plan it in a similar way. It might be
Okay.
first person though, which is a new sort of idea for me.
Yes. I
Not
was going to
really.
ask you that. What, in terms of with POV, like what's what's the appeal of kind of third person intimate versus first person, other than being able to jump through in people's heads a little bit easier?
I think I like using multiple protagonists.
Mm.
And I think it's harder to jump if you're doing first person
Yeah.
than if you're doing is that first person? Trying to remember now. The one I'm writing in New York,
Mm.
yeah, is I'm trying to remember whether it is first person or not, what I've done. It's been so long since I've gone back to the draft. I think that's a mixture. No, that is a mixture of first person, third person, and I'm mixing all the past and presents up as well.
Yes. Well, there's
Um,
first person, like there's past tense, which is like the hard boiled stuff, like Raymond Chandler, those kind of guys.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
first person
yeah,
past because it's was instead of
yeah.
is,
I
and
really
things
like
like that.
I really like writing in present tense because it's so immediate.
Yeah,
Although I
I
know
hate it.
some readers, yeah, exactly. Some readers just do not like
Yeah,
it. So in my head, I'm
yeah,
sort of like, maybe you should start writing in past tense.
yeah,
And then I just really like it. I think you just find what you prefer, and I just really like close third, I think.
yeah,
And
yeah,
every time I think
yeah,
I'll write in first, I think the romance is probably going to be in first because you only really need the main character's point of view,
yes,
really, to tell the story.
yeah, yeah,
But in
yeah.
crime, it's nice to have lots of different views and lots of different thinking, and yeah,
It's
it's more fun.
true. It's
And you
true.
want
I
to tell the
agree.
story from different angles, and different people go different places, and yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I'm kind of having that back and forth with the book I'm working on now. It's like there's the protagonist, and then there's a secondary character, and I'm like, it kind of would be fun to follow some of the stuff the second character the secondary character does. But the novel is first person past tense, and so I'm like, do
Yeah.
I do every other chapter? Do I not do it? Do I just keep them as a secondary person just comes in? It's tough because I also really like the voice of the protagonist. So I'm also like, I don't know if I want to ditch that, but yeah, it's tricky sometimes. But we've come to the end, alas, here at the shores of the sea, my dear hobbits. This was a lot of fun, Sam. How can people, or where can people find you on the interwebs if you would like them to?
So I'm on Instagram, Sam Holland Books. Everything is Sam Holland Books. Instagram, Twitter, or whatever we call it now. My website is www.samhollandbooks.com. And then my other slightly nicer persona, who doesn't say the C word live on podcasts, is Louisa Scar. And I am Louisa Scar Writes, I think, on Instagram, and then Paperclip Girl on Twitter. But I don't have a website for that yet.
That's all right. In time.
Yeah.
Also, for anyone listening on Spotify or Apple or watching on YouTube, there will be links to Sam's books in the description of this episode. So you can also shoot over to various places and go and purchase either gritty serial killer books or slightly nice police procedural books.
Yeah, great. And a bit of romance. The slightly nice police procedural books are basically just a romance over 5 books, I would argue. Yeah. So I'm a nice person.
There you go, then. There you go. Have a nice little police romance with a little sprinkling of murder.
Yeah.
But yeah, this was a lot of fun. Thanks for coming and hanging out, and we'll bring you back some of the time in the near future. And everyone who listened, thank you for tuning in, and I'll see you next week.
The Secret Circle.